listening to Let's Talk Sustainable Business.
Hi, my name is Barbara Mendes-George, and I'm a sustainability communications expert based in Brussels, Belgium. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Let's Talk Sustainable Business, a series brought to you by the Conference Board. Today is the first of a two-part episode with Mari Granström, the CEO and founder of Origin by Ocean. Mari has a PhD in organic chemistry and previously worked on biomaterials for companies including Stora Enso and BASF. Mari says, I've always been enthusiastic about new biomaterials and biorefinery concepts. And for 5 years, I've been working on how to create value from a massive global problem and turn it into a profitable and sustainable business. So for this episode, the theme is the E in ESG, environment. And environmental issues are at the heart of Origin by Ocean, a Finnish-based company founded by Mari in 2019, which rids the oceans of harmful algae and turns it into everyday goods. The company's biorefinery technology removes marine overgrowth and transforms it into ingredients for consumer products. And according to Origin by Ocean, the algae recovered has a range of applications including in food, cosmetics, detergents, agriculture, textiles, and packaging. Mari calls herself Chief Executive Activist at Origin by Ocean, and she says, we are building a business ecosystem based on farmed and harvested algae, which we turn into ingredients that are used in the production of everyday consumer goods. We believe that in order for things to happen at a massive scale, it has to be turned into an industry, one with a reimagined value chain. So welcome, Mari. I'm looking forward to learning more about algae and oceans with you today.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice to be here.
So can I start by asking you what the inspiration and, excuse the pun, origin of the company Origin by Ocean was?
Yeah, it's a long story, so I try to be very short.
Thank you.
Basically, everything started from my love for the oceans and of course, a deep worry. What we can see today is that the oceans are not doing very well. We have several different, very serious problems, and one of them being the eutrophication. So we have excess of nutrients in our waterways, and of course, everything is kind of going towards this massive ocean, right? And they are all accumulated there. And how we see that is that normally the nutrients is not something that you can see because they are dissolved in water, but we start to see these invasive and harmful algae blooms taking place. And that's really the situation which is happening around the world. And of course, coming from Finland and being brought up by Baltic Sea and all the problems that it has faced throughout the years, it was very clear for me that the Baltic Sea is just the one example of let's say the situation when things go too far and people are not doing anything to stop the nutrients influxing into the sea. So I started to, and I've been diving around the world, and I've been kind of witnessing different locations, going from very beautiful, let's say, clear waters to like algae covered areas, and then I started to think that I'm a chemist by training. I've been doing bioprocesses and refineries and stuff like that, so it would be a bit of a waste not to do anything about the problem. So then I started, it was my hobby really, like I started to think that, okay, what could this value chain look like if we were to take this type of algae out from the ocean and remove the nutrients with it, and then what type of a products that we could actually produce from it and how to do it. And the big thing is also the process itself, that is, people tend to think that that if you use biomass, like automatically that means that it's all very sustainable. That's not true. You have to be very careful on things, especially when it comes to the processing of the biomass. So yeah, so that's how it started, and it started as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And then being in a corporations for quite some time, I realized that maybe my time was done and it's time to do something else. And then I resigned and really wanted to try to make this hobby to be kind of seriously taking business.
How nice that a hobby then could turn into a viable business, because I see you're having a lot of success. And I'm glad that you already kind of explained what eutrophication was, because I think when people think about problems relating to climate change in the oceans, they might think of pollution or they might think of acidification. But the EU Blue Bioeconomy Strategy says that eutrophication could wipe out most marine life by the year 2050. So how specifically does your technology help solve this problem of eutrophication?
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful there when we are talking about solving these giant, big
Mm.
problems, because eutrophication is something that it actually originates, from the land. So it's caused by us human beings, and it's caused by farming, and it's caused by industrial wastewaters being released into the rivers, and then of course ending up in the oceans. It's caused by all kind of different industries and activities we have on land. So origin by ocean, we don't touch that source problem, but what we do is that once the nutrients are, in the ocean, and when this algae bloom is starting to happen, so when we take that biomass out, we help the oceans to recover in a way that we can improve the biodiversity. Because what happens is that when you have this algae, biomass, you know floating things around the place, they are taking the oxygen away from the marine ecosystem, of course killing very efficiently all kinds of species. So and then the reason why they bloom comes from the fact that they eat the nutrients, right? And the phosphorus and the nitrates and stuff. So we actually take the nutrients out within the seaweed, if you like. So we are doing that to help the oceans to recover from this biomass accumulation problem, I would say more. But we are not touching the source of it. So that's a completely different conversation if we were to go and talk about the source of the nutrients, which of course is a big problem. But this is how we do it. So we are doing it from the other side.
Hmm. Yeah, one thing at a time, I suppose. There's only so much you can do as a startup at the beginning. So, which geographical areas are you harvesting this algae in? Is it in and around Finland, or on a more worldwide basis?
Yeah, it's a global problem. So we want to be globally active as well, even though that we are a small startup of 25 people. But it's very important from the impact point of view as well, that we can be a process and a business which is scalable. And the scalability means that you have to be able to be there where the biomass is. And that's why we are very active in the Caribbean region. You have around 25 million tons of sargassum seaweed blooms every year in that region, only in the
Only in the
Caribbean.
Caribbean. Wow. Okay,
Yeah, it's
that's a lot. Yeah.
it's a lot. It's one of the biggest environmental problems we have today, and it's kind of increasing all the time. So we have built a supply chain in the Dominican Republic, and it's very important that we do these. I call them exercises, that we can build our second biorefinery in that region. We also source biomass from Europe, so from Portugal and from Spain, also from Norway, and then of course from the Baltic Sea.
Super interesting. And I mean, you talked a bit about the scalability of it, and I guess the potential of it is seems undeniable to me because I read on your website that the commercial processed algae market could surpass over 85 billion US dollars by 2026. And in parallel, you kind of point out the loss that happens from climate and pollution related issues. So, for example, in the Baltic Sea, annual financial losses amount to 4 billion. So, as someone who has worked in sustainability and climate change, is this something that you feel that your stakeholders, investors know about this problem, or is this something that you have to let them know about? And if so, how do you do it? How do you feel is the best way to communicate the urgency of this problem?
Very good question. Very, very good question. Very important one. People are not aware of this. Definitely not. I think in the Nordics, we understand the situation of the Baltic Sea. Having said that, it's always been there. It has always had this type of sickness, if you like. So people kind of gave up, and they're like, it's the Baltic Sea. Well, we have this algae bloom problems during the summer, and for people, it means basically that maybe on Monday you can't go for a swim, but it's not really affecting their everyday lives in this region. Whereas when you go to the Caribbean, it changes completely because people actually live, they live from the ocean. They have built the tourism around the ocean and the beautiful views you have. The whole fishing industry is big. So everything is so highly tied to the ocean. So then, of course, people understand that way more because it has a direct effect on your economy. Whereas in Finland and Sweden, even though that we have this number, what you just mentioned, that we understand how much money we are losing, but only few people, very, let's say, small fraction of the population is actually suffering from that. So the fishermen, for example, in Finland, no one talks about that, but we hardly have any fishermen left anymore. So we definitely have to point this out to the investors to say, like, look, guys, there is a world out there, and these are the problems, these are the the losses we have as a state, and there is definitely urgency there to do something about it. And the funny thing is, I think this is human nature. And sorry to be maybe too philosophical here, but I think that that when we have created a problem as a species, we don't want to talk about that. It's too complicated, and it's like, oh, no, I haven't done anything. It's not me, but it's the guys there. And we start to do this finger pointing exercise. We are very good at doing that, but we are very bad on being honest to ourselves and say, like, look, guys, we are all part of this problem, and we have to do something about that. We have to face the problem. It's an ugly problem, but we have to face it. And it's not rocket science. I mean, for God's sake, it's like the easiest thing to do is like you have to start doing something. But we always have this conversation. We always have this conversation around money, like, what is the loss, and is it a big loss or a small? Like, how do you define that? How is that affecting the economy of the country and the region? And it's very different in South Europe as well, because people know that if the ocean is not doing well, they will suffer. Everyone will suffer from that. So it's a good question, and yeah, we could talk about that for hours, but I stop there for now.
So get in touch with Mari if you want more information about that. But yeah, it is interesting because, as you say, it is a global problem that affects a lot of people even within Europe. Yes, there are lots of landlocked countries in Europe, but as you say, northern and southern Europe, it happens. But it's not really a mainstream topic of conversation. I feel like maybe on a personal level, in the last 5 years, I've heard about algae and toxic algae and stuff. And I'm originally from Portugal. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, I really feel that when we talk about problems in the oceans, it's more pollution or microplastics, and which also could lead to problems in marine life, but not necessarily this. Um, I mean, so you mentioned at the beginning that you're not dealing with the source. So, what is that something you think you're going to do in future with partnering with different organizations across the value chain? How do you see kind of tackling the problem at the source developing, and what do you see your role in it being?
Yeah, I think it comes through our offering. So in our biorefinery, we have a certain value creation model, meaning that we are producing, I hate this term, but I use it now, added value products. And but at the same time, we have this biomass residue which is left behind after the processing, and this happens in every single biorefinery. So every time you are dealing with the biomass, you always have the residue, and this is the big question, right? It's like, what do you do with the residue? What is the value? Like, do you want to burn it for energy, or how do you want to use it? And we definitely don't want to burn it for energy, because it would be a bit silly that the seaweed is also capturing a lot of CO2. And if we were to burn that, basically, then, the whole CO2 is being released into the atmosphere. So we don't want to do that. And it contains the nutrients, and it also contains a lot of other goodies like proteins and fatty acids and what have you. So that's why we actually want to tap into this nutrient recycling thinking, like a circular economy principles, that we take the seaweed out, we take the value out, and then we put the residue back to farming as a fertilizer, or then it can be used as a cattle feed or fish feed, and then we can hopefully reduce amount of synthetic nutrients that we need to use for farming, for example. So then we can have like the nutrients going from sea to land, and not always from land to sea.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I mean, I've got here kind of a very specific example of something that you're doing at the moment. So you've partnered with well-known Finnish brand Marikmekko on a pilot project. And if I understand correctly, they've replaced their synthetic thickener with your algae-based thickener, Cerulo, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Cerulo, yeah.
Cerulo,
Yeah.
within the print paste. So can you tell us a bit more about this project? And is that typical of the kind of partnerships that you have? And are there any other partnerships that you're able to talk to about today?
Yeah, that's a very typical example of the partnerships, and we are very excited about that because it's as you said, it's a well-known design brand, and of course, coming from Finland, it's an iconic brand for us. I think every Finn is owning something Marikmekko, products,
I
and
will say that I went to Finland recently and I felt like every fifth person had a Marikmekko tote bag. It was quite impressive.
yes, yes, you have
You have to, yeah.
to. So I think it's a very good example, and also the type of development process we had together. It been very exciting to work together with them and really look at the manufacturing process because people tend to forget that most of the things what we are using as consumers, they someone has produced them and there has been a process to do so. So it's very important to be able to look at the production processes as well, and how things are being basically processed and manufactured. And this was kind of the start of the collaboration, that we realized that by doing this, what you just mentioned, substituting the synthetic thickness with our offering, alginate, we can have a big effect, positive impact on the manufacturing process of the printing itself. So we can reduce amount of chemicals, so to speak, so the carbon footprint of the process is reduced, and then also the microplastic problem, because of course these chemicals are being washed out from the fabric after the printing. So it's important to understand that they just don't disappear, but they end up somewhere. And that's why we are very happy that we can have a proof of concept to show that this is a very concrete way of working together and improving the value chain of our customers. And we have a lot of these type of collaborations. We can't really mention them because we have, yeah, they will come out at one point. but
Mhm.
but it's really really exciting to see that there is this kind of willingness of big brands and established corporations to change their manufacturing processes and products as well, and it's really exciting to be part of that and bring the positive impact.
Yeah, that must be very satisfying indeed to kind of, yeah, really be part of the change. Before I wrap up part one, are there any other examples of products that your algae based ingredients are going into that you could talk to us about today? Any more just concrete examples so people also know what can be made with algae?
Yeah, I mean, I think one very exciting thing is the UV blocker. So
Okay.
that's something that people don't normally realize. I try to keep this very short, otherwise I will talk about this for hours. But people don't normally realize that the sunscreens we are using today, they have synthetic chemical UV blockers. They are very harmful for the ocean. So most of the coral kills originate from those chemicals. And I'm very happy to, and also they are not good for humans, like
Mhm.
really, they are not good for your skin. Having said that, of course, we don't have any very good alternatives, right? They've been in the market for a very long time. And also, we have these physical blockers. So there are like two types of things, and they have their problems as well. And luckily, EU has put a lot of effort on these chemical synthetic UV blockers to say that they will be banned in the future. Of course, you can't do that in a short period of time if you don't have a substitute. We have one of our products is actually the first 100% bio-based UV blocker, and we are doing a lot of work. We formulate the sunscreens ourselves, and we have done a lot of work on that. And we are really, really excited to see that it actually works. And I think it's just a good example of, and we stole the idea from the seaweed, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we were looking at the seaweed floating about, and we were thinking that there needs to be some sort of a chemical system, they producing their own sunscreen, if you like, that they stay alive.
Mhm.
And then it became one of our products. So it's really exciting to learn from the nature and learn from the seaweed. Like they way more clever than we are sometimes, I think.
And the good thing is that the seaweed can't sue you for patent rights, right? So you can continue to use it. But no, that's really good because I feel, again, as a, let's say, a consumer rather than a sustainability person, only recently have I seen those claims on sunscreens of ocean friendly and things like that. And I was like, I didn't realize that sunscreen wasn't ocean friendly. And yeah, reading into it a bit more, it does seem to be a bit of a problem. So that's really great that you're developing a solution. So, yes, thank you, Mari, for joining us today. This is the first of a two-part episode, so join us next time for part two. And thanks to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to this podcast series and explore the entire catalogue of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting our website at tcb.org/podcasts. See you next time.
That was Let's Talk Sustainable Business.